As a wave of anti-immigrant protests raged across Europe, it seemed there was no end to the fire of anger and the chain of anxiety. One after another, demonstrations and riots erupted, tearing society apart and shrouding it in a fog of distrust. Cold, probing gazes were directed at everyone who crossed the border, sowing an atmosphere of extreme tension. However, in one of Turkey's cities, something so astonishing occurred that it was hard to believe. More than 650,000 people gathered together, causing the entire city to tremble in an atmosphere of euphoria. At the center of this event, strangely enough, was the Pakistani community. In a climate where anti-immigrant sentiment was becoming increasingly pronounced, only they received a special welcome. The Turkish people declared in one voice, "On this land, besides Pakistanis, we trust no one." A shock that overturned all conventional notions rippled across the world. People could not believe what was happening. After all, why were the Pakistanis, of all people, granted such special treatment? What surprising truth was hidden behind this? The flame of anger and the chain of anxiety on the streets. For many days in a row, the streets of Turkey were shaken by anti-immigrant protests. People raised banners, shouting slogans in fury. In the midst of the chaotic crowd, some rocked cars, while others even threw stones, turning marches into violence. The wave of unrest eventually reached the tourist areas, dragging even tourists visiting Istanbul into the chaos. Germany was no exception. In Berlin and Hamburg, riots broke out one after another, and Molotov cocktails painted the night streets crimson. Fierce clashes between youths and the police constantly made headlines. In the alleys, shops were smashed, a testament to the boiling anger of the people. Citizens screamed that immigration policies were destroying their country. Social instability reached its peak. In Turkey, the situation was also extremely serious. In Ankara and Izmir, large-scale demonstrations were repeated. Thousands of people gathered in the square in front of the central station, chanting, "We don't need immigrants." Dark banners fluttered in the wind. Riot police lined up with shields, ready to use tear gas. The atmosphere at the scene was saturated with a tension ready to explode at any moment. Passers-by hurried past. Footage of mothers hugging their children on television screens transmitted anxiety and fatigue to every home. All of Europe was gripped by a chain of anxiety and hostility. Economic stagnation, deteriorating security, rising unemployment. All were blamed on the problem of immigration, leading to a deep division in society. The voices of politicians calling for the acceptance of immigrants grew weaker. Extremist groups operated everywhere, pointing to a burning Europe, the only exception. However, on this agitated and restless European continent, there was one city that was strikingly different from the rest: Istanbul, located on the Bosphorus Strait in Turkey. Immigrants and foreign workers lived here too, but for some reason, the tense atmosphere that prevailed in Ankara or Izmir was completely absent. In the evening, cheerful laughter still echoed on the shopping streets. People calmly stood in line at Simit bakeries. Lively conversations continued on the terraces of tea houses. There were no protest posters, no squads of police ready for battle. Faced with the chaos on their television screens and the peaceful life before their eyes, those visiting the city for the first time felt bewildered. Why was it only different here? Local media also reported that Istanbul was an exception. A large number of foreigners lived in the city, but serious clashes were virtually non-existent. No protest slogans were heard. No scenes of rioting were seen. Behind this backdrop lay a secret that could not be explained by statistics or politics. While all of Europe was plunged into crisis, Istanbul remained calm, as if it belonged to another world. The key to this mystery was the beginning of the story. The influence of a small Pakistani community. When Istanbul's uniqueness began to attract attention, delegations from other cities began to flock there. Why, in the same country, did this place breathe so differently? This puzzle quickly captured the interest of all of Turkey and the world. On social media, posts like, "Why hasn't security collapsed in Istanbul?" spread widely. The comments section was full of speculation. Although many suggested it was due to excellent security measures or a stable economy, testimonies from local residents revealed an unexpected truth. The city's atmosphere had been changed by the existence of a small Pakistani community. They made up only a small fraction of the population, a few tens of thousands of people. Judging by the numbers, they should not have had the power to change an entire society. However, the reality was completely different. This modest presence had a quiet but sufficient influence to calm the tense atmosphere of the entire city. One local resident shared, "They are very quiet and respectful, but it's not just that. Their actions make you feel that they cherish this city very much." Another said, "They are not strangers. They are our brothers, Kardesh Laramais." Why was such a small group able to win such immense trust? It was very difficult for outsiders to understand the reason. Soon, social media was filled with surprised exclamations. In Turkey, shaken by the immigration problem. Why are only the Pakistanis different? The phenomenon, which could not be explained by small numbers, was quietly stirring the minds of people around the world. From indifference to praise. When Istanbul's uniqueness began to attract attention, the initial reaction was indifference. Social media was full of criticism like, "Pakistanis are immigrants too. Immigrants are immigrants. In the end, they are all the same." Many objected to the special treatment they received. Controversial posts were flooded with sarcastic emojis, and ridicule spread across the network. However, the situation gradually changed when Turkish people who actually lived in Istanbul began to speak. They are not foreign bodies. On the contrary, they enrich our lives. After these testimonies were published, the online atmosphere changed dramatically. The comments section filled with surprise and confusion. Is that true? Soon, voices of "I feel the same way" began to layer upon each other. One by one, specific examples were shared. A Pakistani family who moved in next door spoke broken Turkish but always greeted their neighbors politely. Their children, attending school, were courteous and naturally helped friends in trouble. A shopkeeper said, "They don't just buy goods. When they pay, they always say, 'Teşekkür ederim,' thank you, with sincerity." That one word made me very happy. As these personal experiences accumulated, the indifference gradually melted away. Even humorous posts began to appear. If all immigrants were Pakistani, there would be no problem. There were also more radical comments, such as, "Apart from Pakistanis, let no one come." The previous critical voices gradually disappeared. Of course, not everyone switched to praise. Skeptical opinions remained. But when testimonies from real-life experiences on the ground became widely circulated, these objections lost their power. This change showed the immense power that trust can bring, something that cannot be measured in numbers. From indifference to praise, the existence of just a few thousand people changed the discourse around the world. The origins of trust. The era of economic boom. The beginning of this strange relationship can be traced back to the 1,980 seconds and 90 seconds. During Turkey's economic liberalization, a period of rapid industrialization and growth, there was a great need for skilled and hard-working labor. Turkey looked to friendly nations, and Pakistan, with its strong historical and cultural ties, became a key partner. Pakistan sent its engineers, textile workers, and construction specialists here, aiming to contribute to and learn from Turkey's burgeoning industries. They overcame the language barrier, worked tirelessly in factories and on construction sites, and held steadfastly to their positions. Sometimes they were misunderstood. They faced difficulties, but they still humbly sought cooperation. At first, the local Turks treated them with caution, and there were many who did not welcome the workers from afar. However, seeing the Pakistanis working day and night, meticulously going over blueprints and plans, a silent respect began to grow. One local foreman later recalled, "They weren't just working. It was as if they carried the future of their families back home, and even the future of this city on their shoulders." The efforts grew, and it was not a short-term exchange. Soon, Pakistani companies began to open their representative offices in Istanbul, becoming part of the joint development with the city. The story here went beyond purely economic ties. It was a story of mutual learning and respect. At that time, no one could have predicted that this relationship would turn into a miracle that would shake the world 30 years later. Trust beyond numbers. The growth of Pakistani business. That small exchange quietly grew into a great wave. The deep connection that began with labor and industry spread over several decades to many areas of the economy, turning Istanbul into a major stronghold for Pakistani business. Over time, Istanbul became special. The city that was once a place for industrial collaboration quickly transformed into a hub integrating diverse sectors, such as e-commerce, textiles, and finance. After a few decades, the number of companies with Pakistani investment grew to more than 600. Usually, when so many foreign companies arrive, conflicts or protests are inevitable. Concerns like, will they take our jobs? Or, will the character of the city be damaged? Might arise. But in Istanbul, on the contrary, the sentiment spread, it's very peaceful with the Pakistanis. The reason was not due to any outstanding features, but to the manner of the Pakistanis, never imposing their own way, always prioritizing harmony with those around them. Whether in business activities or in life, they always maintained a modest and sincere attitude. In business deals, they valued building trust more than flashy advertising, and constantly made efforts to put down roots in the local community. One Turkish businessman said in an interview, "They don't put profit first. They honor their contracts, they don't break promises, and they accumulate credibility bit by bit. That is why we are willing to partner with them." If you work in daily life, it was the same. Pakistani families did not forget to greet their neighbors and actively participated in community events. During festivals or neighborhood cleanups, they were not just invited guests but were those who acted on their own initiative. This attitude cemented in people's minds their image as partners, jointly protecting the city. The Pakistani way turned a wall of alienation into a bridge. Commercial activity did not divide the city but, on the contrary, became the foundation for nurturing trust and empathy. Istanbul quickly established its solid status as a hub for Pakistani business in the region. For the locals, it was not just an economic benefit, but also a sense of security from living next to sincere neighbors. Trust that cannot be measured by numerical values became the key that made this city special. The miracle of fusion. The festival of Pakistani culture. As economic ties strengthened, Istanbul transformed from a simple trading city into a center of cultural exchange. Usually, when a large amount of foreign culture is suddenly introduced, it causes tension. But in this city, the fusion happened surprisingly naturally. The most vivid example was the annual Pakistani Culture Festival. Crowds of people gathered in a square by the Bosphorus, and the entire city was immersed in Pakistani culture for a day. However, it was not a culture that claimed superiority. At a Pakistani tea-tasting area, Turks also enjoyed the milky chai together. During a Qawwali performance, they might easily invite you. Now it's your turn to try. It was a place where the lines between performers and spectators blurred, where everyone could enjoy together. Similar scenes were observed in culinary culture. Biryani, a traditional dish, was served with a Turkish interpretation, sometimes with the addition of local olives or spices. In a normal situation, such a scene would likely be rejected with the statement, "This is not Pakistani culture." But the Pakistanis accepted it with a smile. They would say, "That's an interesting idea." They not only protected their culture but, together with the locals, created new forms with flexibility. This gentleness gradually opened the hearts of the Turkish people. One Turkish woman said, "The Pakistanis always say, 'Let's do it together.' They don't impose their culture, but share it gladly. That's why we can open up freely." This phrase resonated on social media. The statement, "Only the Pakistanis are an exception," was repeated again and again. In Istanbul's cityscape, Pakistani restaurants and bookshops fit in naturally, without creating a sense of rejection. A Pakistani kebab shop and a Turkish pied bakery would recommend customers to each other. These accumulated small things nurtured a sense of security that this is our shared city. While the immigration issue was dividing societies around the world, Istanbul maintained its unique atmosphere. This was absolutely not the result of any special regime or policy. It happened because the Pakistanis turned cultural differences from a source of conflict into a source of fusion, not to deny each other, but to respect each other and enjoy together. It was this attitude that allowed this city to be called a miraculous exception, a strong friendship during the storm. Proof of partnership. Was this cultural fusion real? The test came a few years ago when massive floods swept across Pakistan, causing a major disaster. The city of Istanbul united with Pakistan in an unexpected way. Footage of the floods spread across the world. Submerged villages, skies heavy with rain. The tragic scenes broadcast on television caused a great shock to people far away in Turkey. For the Pakistani community living in Istanbul, that day also became an unforgettable one, a day they shared the pain of their homeland. The next morning, an incredible scene unfolded in front of a Pakistani community center. Under heavy rain, a long queue of Turkish people had formed. They held donation boxes, carried food and clothing. One trembling old man dropped a coin and said, "This is our gratitude." He explained that now was the time to return the kindness they had received for so long. Hearing these words, many Pakistanis could not hold back their tears. The line of people did not end in one day but spread throughout the city, in front of mosques, in shopping districts, at the station square. Fundraising efforts were not ordered by anyone, but were spontaneous. The local press wrote, "All of Istanbul is in motion." Television showed footage of children carrying their small piggy banks. This spontaneous show of solidarity was possible because the Pakistanis had quietly accumulated trust in their daily lives. The residents of this city saw Pakistanis as partners, not just foreigners. One young man commented on social media, "The Pakistanis have always quietly done their part. That's why, when they are in trouble, we cannot stand aside." This phrase instantly went viral, and the whole world was amazed by this incredible solidarity. This unprecedented natural disaster once again highlighted the bond built between Pakistan and Istanbul. The trust nurtured bit by bit. The time spent together, the mutual care. All of it manifested in a concrete form during the test. The city's residents began to realize that the Pakistanis had moved beyond the concept of immigrants. They had become comrades with whom they live and build a future together. This was a truth revealed by a catastrophe. Revelation without borders, commonality, and the future. After the disaster, the city's feelings for the Pakistani community grew even deeper. A few years later, a school in Istanbul organized an event called Day of International Understanding, aimed at having children from different countries present their culture and learn about each other's differences. On stage, children in national costumes sang and danced, warming up the atmosphere in the hall. At that moment, an 8-year-old Pakistani boy walked onto the stage alone. With his small figure, he took the microphone and said an unexpected phrase. "Instead of talking about our differences, let's look for what we share." At that moment, the whole hall fell silent. Teachers and parents held their breath. The boy, along with his friends, presented Pakistani hospitality, Mehman Nawazi, which went hand in hand with Turkish hospitality, misafirperverlik, and Pakistani diligence with the Turkish work ethic. They laughed and said, "Though our countries are different, we share many of the same true values." All eyes were fixed on them. Then they enthusiastically called out, "Borders are not walls. They can become bridges." When the presentation ended, the hall erupted in thunderous applause. Someone was moved to tears. Some parents sighed, "I've learned something from a child." This video quickly spread on social media, and praise poured in from all over the world. If we are to trust the future to anyone, it is to the Pakistani children. This small event provided a silent conclusion for the city's residents. In an era that calls for division, is it really necessary to emphasize differences? The boy's naive words awakened a perspective that had been dormant in the minds of adults. This pure message went beyond Istanbul, resonating in the hearts of people around the world, reminding many that seeking commonality, overcoming borders and religions, is the first step towards true coexistence, a guiding star for a divided world. Why only the Pakistanis? This question, along with videos conveying the warm atmosphere of Istanbul, quickly spread on social media. This phrase deeply touched the hearts of people around the world. From observing decorum when traveling, not imposing their culture, to not forgetting to say thank you, the attitude of the Pakistanis could no longer be described as just a successful case of foreigners. They not only avoided creating conflict in a foreign country, but they also contributed to the local society, building trust and respect piece by piece. Their path was eventually called a guiding star for a divided world. Why? In a world constantly filled with news of conflict and rejection due to immigration issues, the Pakistani community in Istanbul quietly refuted this norm. The influence they demonstrated was not in loud declarations or large numbers. Their strength came from the accumulation of small deeds, daily politeness, and a humility that always cared for others. This is the true strength that can move a society forward. Soon, this case attracted worldwide attention as a perfect model for cultural coexistence. The image demonstrated by the Pakistanis posed a fundamental question to the whole world. Not a simple choice between accepting or rejecting immigrants, but how to accept and how to live together. Local residents say in one voice, "Meeting them, we truly understood the meaning of coexistence." The Pakistanis are those who exist quietly but firmly. Their way of life is perhaps the answer that this era of division is searching for. Their image continues to ask the world a question to this day. Not, why are only the Pakistanis special, but why can't we do the same?